Ki-charm Kim is a young fellow living in destitution in the ghettos of an anonymous South Korean city with his family: father Ki-tae Kim, Toon Kong-ho, mother Chung-sub Kim, Jang Hae-jin, and sister Ki-yoon. The family lives in a nursery unit where they battle finding a Wi-Fi sign to slip into to gain admittance to the web, to sit in front of the television, get disinfected on, and need to watch men peeing in the rear entryway outside their home. They earn enough to pay the bills by doing modest errands, for example, collapsing pizza boxes, and, surprisingly, then, get reprimanded by the pizza representatives for wrecking the crates. Ki-charm's well-off companion Min-hyuk visits the family, giving them a gift, a stone that should bring the individuals who have it riches and success. He then tells Ki-charm that he has been coaching the teen girl of an exceptionally well-off family. He is passing on to concentrate abroad, however, is enamored with the girl, and knows that any of the other college young men would take her away. He needs Ki-charm to be her coach, realizing he will look after her so Min-hyuk can propose to her once she graduates secondary school. Ki-charm realizes he isn't qualified since he isn't in school, yet Min-hyuk vows to vouch for him, thus he concurs and has Ki-yoon produce certifications for him to take to his meeting. Ki-charm interviews at the extremely well-off Park family, where he meets Mr. Park, Lee Sun-kyun, his empty-headed spouse Mrs. Park, Choi Yeo-jong, and their youngsters, high school little girl Da-hae and youthful child Da-toon. Ki-charm acknowledges he wants to play with Da-hae to land the position, and he does. Mrs. Park pays him an excessive measure of cash and notices they need a craftsmanship coach for Da-toon. DeMelody had a horrendous episode where he saw a phantom in the house and had a seizure and has been requiring assist with his craft. Ki-charm acquaints them with Ki-young, who produces reports for her and goes by Jessica, and she also starts bringing in cash at a mind-blowing rate. At the point when the recreation area's limo driver brings her back home, Ki-yoon passes on her clothing in the vehicle to get him terminated. She then, at that point, proposes her uncle as the new driver, who is truly Ki-tae. The last position is that of the servant, Moon-kwang, Lee Jung-eun. She has worked for the home since before the recreation area family resided there. She worked for the past proprietor, an unconventional designer. To get her terminated, the Kims exploit her aversion to peaches, making her have hypersensitive responses. They then persuade Mrs. Park that she is genuinely infectiously sick and can't be around their child. She leaves, crushed, and Mrs. Kim is given the work, tricking the recreation area family into recruiting the whole Kim family. The Kim family partakes in their monstrous increment of pay, and when the recreation area family chooses to pass on to go setting up camp for Da-toon's birthday end of the week, they make a move to remain in the enormous park house for the end of the week. They go through the night drinking and eating and ruining the spot. When the doorbell rings, it's Moon-kwang. She asserts she was terminated so rapidly she left without having the option to get something and simply needs it back. Mrs. Kim hesitantly gives her access, and Moon-kwang runs into the cellar and starts shouting, opening a mysterious entry behind some racks. She goes to her better half, Gunnae, Park Myung-hoon, who has covertly been living in the fortification since the past proprietor moved out to stow away from predatory lenders. She gives him food while Mrs. Kim on searches with sickening dread. She tells Moon-kwang she wants to leave, and as Moon-kwang implores her to allow them to remain, the remainder of the Kim family, who had been listening in, tumbles off the steps and into view, and they call one another father, and so on, which Moon-kwang films on her telephone, understanding the con the family has pulled. She takes steps to send it to the recreation area family and utilizations that so she and her better half can compel the Kim family to do their offering. The Kim family figures out how to get the advantage on them, getting them into the mystery dugout, yet the recreation area family calls. They've dropped their setting up camp excursion because of downpour and will be home shortly. The Kims scramble, attempting to tidy up as much wreck as possible, keeping the other two in the storm cellar. They figure out how to do a sufficient work that the remainder of the family can stow away while Mrs. Kim gives the Parks their supper. When Moon-kwang breaks out and runs higher up, Mrs. Kim pushes her back down the steps, where she hits her head and is seriously injured. Moon-kwang and Gunnae are secured in the shelter. Mr. and Mrs. Park wind up dozing in the lounge to watch out for Da-toon, who is exploring nature out in the lawn, compelling the Kims to remain under the table.
frozen the entire evening, even as the Parks gripe about Mr. Kim's smell and afterward engage in sexual relations. In the end, at an ungodly hour, they can escape. They get back to find their loft totally overwhelmed with downpour and sewage. Ki-charm takes the stone, and the family dozes in a safe house for the evening. The following day, Mrs. Park chooses to arrange an off-the-cuff party for Datun. The Kim family, in their jobs as help, are welcomed and need to imagine that they don't realize that there are two individuals secured in a fortification under the house. Ki-charm brings the stone down into the fortification, where Moonkwon has passed on and is trapped by Gunasei, who clubs him in the head with the stone. He then, at that point, enters the party, where he wounds Ki-young in the chest. The party detonates into frightfulness, and Datun has a seizure. Gunasei was the phantom he had found in the house earlier. Mr. Park shouts at his driver, Mr. Kim, who is attempting to stop Ki-young's dying, for the vehicle keys to take his child to the medical clinic, and he tosses them to him. They land under Gunasei, who is battling with Mrs. Kim. She figures out how to kill him by cutting him with a meat stick. Mr. Park gets the keys, however communicates disturbs at Gunasei's smell. This triggers Mr. Kim, who snaps and cuts Mr. Park, killing him. Mrs. Park blacks out as Mr. Kim escapes. Ki-charm awakens in the emergency clinic, where he had been in a state of unconsciousness for a really long time. He figures out that Ki-young has passed on, and he and Mrs. Kim are condemned to probation. There has been no indication of Mr. Kim, despite the fact that the police have been looking for him for Mr. Park's homicide all over. Ki-charm leaves the stone in a stream and notices the previous Park house where he sees the lights glimmering. Ki-charm deciphers the glinting from Morse code, and learns Mr. Kim is controlling them from inside the shelter, where he is presently residing, sneaking higher up for food from the new proprietors. Ki-charm composes his dad a letter back, settling that sometime he will become rich enough that he can purchase the house and their family can be brought together.